And I am going to start with a very general question for all of you. And you've touched on this, all of you have in your statements, but just concisely, what part of the IIJA had the greatest benefit for your experience, and which one has presented the greatest challenge? And Mr. McMurray.
Thank you. The greatest benefit comes from what we consider the core formula programs, that being National Highway Priority Program, the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, which is truly the most flexible to use for the states and MPOs. And again, I remind everybody there's sub-allocation by population from under 5,000, from 5 to 50, 50 to 200 and greater. So there's, again, flexibility that we can use. The other programs certainly are the safety program that I mentioned in my testimony. The increased funding and highway safety improvement program is absolutely vital as we take on the nation's 40,000 fatalities on our roadways, which is just not acceptable. And then I add the bridge formula program that, again, was added by the IIJA, which, again, gives direct funding that can be used, especially for local governments, because bridges are everywhere. And in fact, in Georgia, there's more local bridges than there are state-owned bridges, and we invest in every bridge in Georgia, federally and with state dollars, because all bridges are vital for safe and secure travel. And so those core formula programs have been customary and necessary, not only for utilization, but for the planning process. We each do a state transportation improvement program, either 4 to 6 years, and long-range transportation planning out to 20 years, counting on reliable funding, reliability from year to year in those core formula programs, because it takes too long to deliver these projects. So we need that really funding certainty in those core programs to know that we can deliver through the planning process, through the design, environmental, right-of-way, construction process to get the infrastructure delivered. Some of those challenges out of the IIJA in Georgia have been, though, on some of the new programs. Again, to Mr. Carroll's testimony, again, things are happening and we need to be able to be responsive, to be able to use to protect dollars, which, again, I say thank you in the IIJA, because we never had the ability to use federal dollars to work on things such as slides or flooding and using federal dollars. But it's been hard to deploy because they're new programs. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges, too, has been in the TAP program, the Transportation Alternatives Program, to try to deliver federal projects locally through a competitive process to very rural areas. It's just hard to ask a population under 5,000 to deliver a federal aid project due to the complexity of the funding, the NEPA, and often in Georgia we've had cities and communities say no thank you after they were awarded a grant, or excuse me, through the competitive grant process that the state DOTs have to administer, because they realize how much more cost it takes to actually administer the program. It's simply easier for them just to deliver the project themselves with no federal dollars. So those are, those couple of programs. Obviously, NEVI was a new program. It's already been mentioned today. States have been moving forward with those programs. Obviously, it's taken a while to stand up those programs. From an AASHTO perspective, every state has different procurement rules and methodologies. In Georgia, we believe strongly that we shouldn't put state dollars with the NEVI dollars. We're using a public-private partnership to use the federal dollars and private sector dollars to deliver the NEVI program. But states have struggled in
How many have you built under the NEVI program?
We have 5 under contract.
So you haven't built any?
Built.
Okay.
And it's the NEVI program was a very much surface transportation program to a technology solution. And so it's very different. Mm-hmm. No state DOT had built C-stores or, gas stations.
Right.
And so how to do this on private property, it's taken a long time to navigate. We're fortunate because we have a public-private partnership to be laws that allow us to advance. Other states were really boxed in that they couldn't even deliver because they didn't have a method that they could deliver on.
Yeah, that's a real problem, yeah. So, Mr. Johnson, quickly, if greatest benefit and greatest challenge.
Chairman, I think obviously the greatest benefit is the amount of money coming out in the formulaic funding, and it took a while to get started. It was delayed a little bit from authorization to appropriation in 21 and 22, but since then, we've seen a lot of money coming into the states that we work in. We've got good backlog. We've hired more people, and all of that is good. Something else that's been very good about IIJA was the exemptions for the construction materials. It's hard to imagine, but 20 to 30% of aggregate oil, asphalt binder, cement binder for concrete comes in from outside the U.S. Not because we wanted to, but we have to. We have roughly 60 asphalt plants, most of them in the West, but 10 or 15 in Mississippi and Tennessee, and a lot of those asphalt plants use binder from Canada. Some even use binder from South Korea. If we were to shut that off or put tariffs on it, it would cause inflation, or it'd cause problems with getting jobs done on time. Some of the things that I think the next bill should look at that did not is using recycled materials in the paving. The technology is there to use up to 40% reclaimed asphalt pavement in new asphalt. That has the benefit of lowering the cost, reducing truck trips, increasing safety on the roads because you're reducing truck trips, less air emissions, and you're using material that's U.S. material, so you're not having to import from outside the country.
I'm gonna stop you there because I want to get Mr.
Sure.
Carroll a chance to answer quickly, plus and minus that.
Well, there's a lot of agreement. I think I would focus on the safety investments is one of the biggest pluses for us, and I will make another plug for discretionary programs and direct funding for cities and other local governments, because I think we hear directly when there's issues and are often in a position to react more in alignment with what constituents are talking about. I feel like there's certainly a lot of work that we need to do to focus on project delivery, and I think you've heard that in the other comments as well. So anything we can do to improve that, to streamline that, I'm certainly going to be in favor for.
Thank you. To make a quick comment about the NEVI program, because Senator from California brought up that $1.8 billion had been released for that program, but I want to point out that $1.8 billion has resulted in 58 chargers being built in 3.5 years, and in 15 states. Now, Mr. McMurray said that he has 5 on the drawing board. Mr. Carroll, do you have any input on this?
So PennDOT administers the NEVI program.
Yeah.
We've been working on the charging fuel infrastructure program, and we have not constructed any, but we're planning to build about 200 citywide with that.
Right. So, I mean, if we're going to efficiencies and moving things quicker, I'm not sure that program is a good example of the best way the federal government. Personally, I thought it should all been left to the private sector, just like gas stations were built back in the day, but obviously lost on that one. Quick question for you, Mr. Johnson. Just curious, we've had a lot of snow and ice, and Mr. McMurray, I'm sure, well, all three of you really have to deal with the unpredictability. When the weather gets cold like this, it really wreaks havoc on paving, highways, and if there's nothing that gets somebody steamed up more than anything, it's popping a tire in a pothole. So it happens frequently in the winter for us in West Virginia. Are you finding this year is any more exceptional? Mr. Carroll, I'll go to you because you've had a lot of cold weather there.
Yeah, it's been on the high end. What's sometimes worse is the freeze-thaw, back and forth. And so because it was colder for longer periods of time, it didn't get as high as I've seen it, but it was pretty high.
So does your municipality handle that? That's what it's handled in?
We do.
Yeah. What about you, Mr. McMurray? Are you seeing anything? I know it was even colder down in Georgia.
Yes, we actually had a big event that had snow from metro Atlanta all the way to the coast down to Florida just a few weeks ago. So that was a very, very big event for us. And you're right, nobody wants to hit a pothole that results from cold weather. And so we do our best to get back out there and repair roadways as soon as the weather clears.
Mr. Johnson, do you have any?
We do a significant amount of work in the state of California and Washington, and the rains that we've had, torrential rains in California, have caused a lot of short-term and now long-term problems with washing out roads that are going to have to be rebuilt. So it is an issue, and it varies geographically from state to state.
So no matter how long you plan or how much you plan for, there's always the unpredictability.
Correct.
We didn't ask about Buy America waivers. Mr. McMurray, do you have a comment? How often you use those? How do they work? Are they working? And how can we alleviate that in a new bill?
Let me just talk a little bit about Buy America. First and foremost, Georgia and AASHTO totally supports, American manufacturing. So foundationally, we're all in violent agreement, I like to say, on that principle. The issue that has happened through Buy America, Build America is trying through the construction materials, each state is having to certify the material that is Buy America compliant. So 50 states are having to do 50 different ways. That's where AASHTO stepped in and said, working with Federal Highway, let's make a repository of materials that if they're Buy America compliant in Georgia, it will be the same for West Virginia. So AASHTO has taken that lead. Now, this is my comment is that might have been a better Federal Highway initiative to say, if this is good for the nation, synthesize it one time instead of 50 efforts. But AASHTO has taken the lead in that. We would hope going forward in reauthorization that that could be a national database of Buy America compliant components. As it relates to the waiver that was suspended under the previous administration, I'm really worried about that because in my written testimony, you'll see that traditionally utilities that are part of our projects that we all get involved in for water, sewer, telecoms, all those components are usually bought by municipal associations in bulk, not to just do a federal aid project, which may be 1,000 feet or maybe even a half a mile long. They're buying miles of power lines, they're buying miles of ductile iron pipe, fittings. You heard the testimony of submersible pumps, things like that. The components are really concerning if we can't have waivers while we work our way to American-made manufacturing.
Well, thank you, Senator White.